What doesn't require a license but should? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Coroners, the people who do death investigation, autopsies. In most states, it's an elected position and you need literally zero qualifications. Forensic pathologists, on the other hand, are physicians and have gone to medical school, done residency, and are trained specifically to perform autopsies. But in a lot of places, a coroner can overrule the decision of a forensic pathologist. Many states have elected coroners who can issue death certificates with zero medical experience, but require a licensed medical examiner to perform an autopsy. An autopsy is generally inadmissible in court in almost all U.S. jurisdictions if it isn't at least supervised by a trained professional. This is true. I am a coroner's technician and perform autopsies. Only allowed to be done under the supervision of a forensic pathologist, even though I work at a coroner's office. And for smaller counties with no coroner or ME's office, they are transported to the nearest medical examiner's office for autopsy. Also, good luck getting a job with no experience or schooling. It's very hard. I would not be comfortable working in an environment where I wasn't surrounded by those with proper training schooling. Story 2. Pulling a trailer. So many people don't understand load and towing capacity. One day I was driving down the freeway at 70+ mph heading home from work, and a trailer attached to the truck in front of me started to wobble violently before detaching. It went to one side and reared up, which redirected it over towards the median, where it looked like it was going to hop over into oncoming traffic, but instead continued to go back and forth across all 5 lanes of traffic until finally coming to a stop. It's a miracle that nobody's car was even dinged because traffic was fairly dense. And that's only the second most terrifying thing that's come off of a truck right in front of me on the freeway. Story 3. Being a counselor or therapist here in the UK. The sheer amount of people who just up and start calling themselves these titles and start practicing is disgusting. No idea the level of traumas they can inflict on others who are more vulnerable just by not being prepared. Luckily, things are changing, and it should come into effect fairly soon. Similarly, the same with life coaches in the US. But traction is gathering to change that quickly. A life coach therapist in Utah is now in prison with one of her client's business partners for felony child abuse of said partner's kids. Story 4. Being a substitute teacher in all 50 states. When I signed up, I thought, man, they really shouldn't be letting me, a 21 years old college dropout, teach children for any length of time. Then I attended the training, where the fellow substitutes could hardly unmute themselves on Zoom or manage to speak enough words to participate in the training. Then my thought changed to, man, they shouldn't be letting any of us teach children for any length of time. Edit. To clarify, since people seem to be confused, the post asked what doesn't require a license but should. I am aware many states do require a license for subs, but many other states like Texas, Florida, and Alabama do not. Story 5. In Pennsylvania, you need a license to cut hair and do nails, but you don't need one to be an electrician and burn someone's house down. Some local municipalities require them, but the vast majority don't. Edit, just to add, when I was self-employed, customers would call up for a quote or to start a job and ask for my license number. I told them I was registered as a contractor with the state, and I could give them that number, but there was no license number. I'm in a very rural part of the state. There was literally no entity that licensed you. Bigger cities, Philly, Pittsburgh, even Scranton issue licenses, but they only apply within their city limits. All you need for a license in Scranton is a check. I forget how much it was, but that was literally it. Write a check, get a piece of paper that says you can work in the city. I'm in favor of a statewide license, but I don't want to turn this political. It will never happen with the smaller government list regulation crowd. Story 6. Nutrition counselors. People use the services of scammers. Some people don't even understand what a calorie intake is. Related. This is why the supplements and vitamins industry fight tooth and nail against becoming medical products and insist on being classed as food additives. The amount of GMP and GLP required for medical stuff is through the roof. Under most legislation, for a food additive, the amounts and RDA and etc. on the sticker don't even have to be verified. Obviously, for a medicine, it is extremely tightly controlled and verified, and Those house brand supplements you're buying from your local pharmacy, supermarket, sports shop could have any amount of anything in them. And you have very little recourse to do anything should you need to. Also, once they are classified as medical, they would need an evidence-based study to support all their claims. Is St. John's wort good for diabetes? Okay, let's do a randomized control trial under FDA guidelines of SJW versus insulin and see if what you're saying is true. For a food or additive, you can say what you want, like Red Bull gives you wings. You can't legally say that for aspirin. Story 7. Being an auto mechanic. Anybody can legally do it. You need a license to cut hair, but anybody can legally work on your brakes. There are certifications from ASEs, but those aren't a requirement. Most shops have a soft requirement for ASE certification, but they can't 100% require it. Some of the mechanics I've worked with, I'm a service writer for a living right now, haven't had ASE, but they are really good at what they do. Once you've worked on vehicles for long enough, experience trumps a certificate. Now, for electric vehicles, I definitely would want a licensing requirement. High voltage is no joke. And the amount of computerized systems in a EV basically mandate that you know exactly what you are doing. ICE engines can take a lot of bodges and abuse, but not EV motors, battery systems. Story 8. This may be controversial, but I think service dogs should be licensed. I seriously think it would be so easy and remove so many issues that people run into when they try to enter businesses with service dogs. There are basic obedience and training tests that could be run that a dog has to pass to be a licensed service dog, and then a business can't deny you. They ask to see your license and you show it. Everything is good. I understand the privacy factor, but I think just having a standard license doesn't have to cross any lines for privacy with disability, and it removes the headache. Story 9. Knowing it's a very unpopular opinion among gun nuts where I live, and while being a gun owner myself, there really should be mandatory training and passing of something to be licensed to own firearms. At the very least, a good mental health examination could do a lot to keep it out of the hands of the more unstable and mentally unwell people that might decide to go on a killing rampage. I'm Canadian. We have a mandatory course and exam, written and practical, before you can apply for a license. Once licensed, you are the subject of frequent criminal background checks, and you need to renew the license every 5 years. The guns that are causing the problems aren't being used by legal owners, and nearly all of them have been illegally imported from the US. Story 10. One thing that doesn't require a license but definitely should is owning and operating a drone. Drones are becoming increasingly popular, and while they're fun and useful, they also come with a lot of responsibilities. Without proper training and regulation, they can pose serious risks to privacy, safety, and even airspace security. Consider how drones can be flown in restricted areas, near airports, or over private properties without the owner's consent. There's also the potential for accidents if they're not operated correctly. Having a licensing system in place would ensure that drone operators are knowledgeable about the rules, safety protocols, and ethical considerations involved in flying drones. Story 11. Breeding animals. I get trashed all the time for why I purchased a dog from a breeder I usually adopt, and my answer was that I was frustrated with adopting so many dogs with major behavioral or health issues. Most breeders just shove 2 dogs at each other, hope for a massive litter, charge astronomical prices, and are shocked when puppies don't sell. Then, those puppies are dumped at the shelter. I have been adopting puppy mill dogs who were poorly socialized, not at all trained, and have major behavioral issues that need a lot of training correcting. Meanwhile, I finally found a great breeder who has an extremely selective breeding program and purchased a dog. Hands down, she is the most well-behaved dog I have ever owned. The breeder also breeds service dogs and is careful to make sure she chooses parents with good health and excellent behavioral patterns to create calm puppies, who she works to socialize and start the training process at a very young age. The breeder also commented that she doesn't get rich breeding dogs, but barely makes enough to scrape by combined with her husband's separate income. And only because she has decades of experience and time to build a reputation, and the fact that she partners with service dog training programs. She lamented that breeding is so unregulated and customers so unknowledgeable that they would rather buy a puppy mill dog with issues unknown than a well-bred dog to keep breeds healthier and owners happier. I completely agree. But I think a fast way to move towards more responsible dog ownership and breeding is to license breeders. Have some sort of required minimum to go with it too, like any dog sold must be vaccinated by a certified vet, not a vaccination clinic, and must have an examination to go with it, etc. Story 12. Politicians. I know it sounds weird, but think about it. The most powerful men and women in our society also have the least qualifications. Most politicians require no qualifications whatsoever. The President of the United States has access to nuclear weapons launch codes, and his only qualification is older than 35. It's ridiculous. You need a license to be a hot dog vendor outside the city ballpark, but you don't need any qualifications to be mayor of that same city. Many politicians have been grilled by reporters only to reveal that they literally don't understand how the government works. Imagine asking an auto mechanic what the spark plugs do, and receiving only a blank stare in response, or some meaningless time filler answer like spark plugs are very important to the car. And that's why I support spark plugs. That's how frightening it is to see a politician who doesn't understand the rules governing the office he's running for. Story 13. Renting a U-Haul. These people have no experience driving this equipment, and sometimes they even have trailers attached to the back there, basically driving a truck. The first time I rented and was driving one, I could not believe I didn't need any form of training besides a slandered license. I've stopped someone at a red light to inform them that their U-Haul was open and stuff was falling out the back. Whenever I see one on the road, I assume it's the first time that person is driving one and avoid being anywhere near the U-Haul. Story 14. Driving a vehicle for consumer use that weighs over 5,500 lb. You are now a much bigger hazard than most cars on the road and should require extra training to operate the vehicle. EV SUVs are extremely heavy and very fast. People are getting 6,000 to 8,000 lb cars to commute in and have the capability to absolutely demolish any compact sedan on the road. Same goes for pickups above a certain height, weight, or length. They are more difficult to maneuver, and the higher hood height makes them substantially more dangerous to low vehicles and pedestrians. If you drive a more dangerous car, you should have to take an extra certification to operate it. Story 15. I'm in Texas. For God's sake, start making general contractors and subs be licensed. I'm so tired of getting to a site and spending 4 days fixing the tiler's work and costing the customer thousands. These fly-by-nighters are killing our industry. I did a floor job on a project like that. Thankfully for the homeowners, there was no heavy equipment involved, or I would imagine a similar accident. Also thankfully, my friend who did the floor, the guy I helped for a day, is a professional who only does one thing, and does it well. The contractor the homeowner hired to update the kitchen and bathrooms was an absolute clown though. The first thing I noticed is that everything he installed was the bargain basement from Home Depot. And this was a house in a subdivision with a private school, and these homeowners had money and were willing to pay for quality. Like the wood floor we installed was solid wood, not engineered wood with a veneer. I think my favorite example of just how unqualified this dude was is that he blatantly painted over picture hangers on the walls he repainted. Like, come on, bro. I know you felt that big-ass picture hook underneath your paint roller. It's a basic fact that prep work is the most time-consuming part of the job for any qualified painter. But this wannabe jack of all trades didn't get that memo. His most expensive would have been the sliding glass door into the backyard. The thing about doors is it requires a lot of finesse to get them plump and square. And this guy clearly just hammered the top of the door into place without adjusting the rough opening at all whatsoever. It took gorilla strength to open the center section more than halfway on the rail, and that's unacceptable for a finished build regardless if the homeowner had gorilla strength or not. The house was originally built 20 years ago, and even with the best foundation on earth, any house will have settled to where you may need to correct a door opening before installing a new door. He eventually wound up getting fired off that job. I'm not sure what the final straw was, but I'm guessing it was probably when he went to the homeowner to bill them for the flooring job they'd already directly paid my friend for. Seems to have been a straight-up scam job by someone who thought they could play contractor, underbid it to get the job, and then kept asking for more money when cutting corners wasn't enough to make a profit on the job. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.